commence this, I think, 4-part series of this dars by firstly thanking each and every one of you on behalf of the 45th Cutting Sufi Baijan Darbar and the ulama at the Islamic Lifestyle Solutions for taking this time, inshallah, to spend a few moments in remembering the men of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we commence by asking Allah Azza wa Jalla to accept our attendance here today, and may it be a means of salvation for us in the akhirah, inshallah. Now, we've advertised this particular dars program. I'm sure I can see quite a bit of youngsters as well, and those of you who have been speaking to me about it, I'm sure that many are avid fans of the Islamic series known as Ertugrul. And based on this, I think my 11-year-old daughter was the one who actually inspired me to get into this type of dars programs, because I saw groups of youngsters so intrigued. And when we look at what's happening in the 21st century with the media, and we find that example, most of the modern day, whether it's the fantasy genre of movies and whatever that's out there, our youth are so amazed by the idea of magic that exists. Here we get the opportunity to see the power of the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's very important as well. So before we actually commence with the Book of Quintessence, which is what has been advertised in the media and the posters as well, it will be, I think, criminal for us to not delve first and foremostly a little bit briefly into the history or biography of Shaykh Ibn Arabi rahimahullah, and following that, inshallah, then we'll commence with the analysis of the book and the breakdown of how we're actually going to be studying it over the next few weeks. Now, Shaykh Ibn Arabi rahimahullah, and for those of you again who are not very familiar with him, he was born on the 17th of Ramadan. And what's the other important thing that happened on the 17th of Ramadan? Anyone? Battle of Badr. So there's obviously some historical significance there as well. So on the 17th of Ramadan, about 563 years after the Hijrah. And this is in accordance to about 1165 in our time. And subhanallah, if you look at between then and now, we're looking at about over 850 years later. So we're discussing someone from over 850 years ago. And it also shows the manifestation of the proof of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's verse when he said, فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ. Remember me and I will remember you. So these awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is still discussing in the 21st century, this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ensuring that because they remembered him in every step, that we today never forget who they are. But of course the bara'aks and the mirror of that statement of remember me and I shall remember you also comes with a warning. Forget me, maybe I'll forget you. So we should also not be of those who only when we are in a little bit of trouble or stuck in the mud that we turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It should be a continuous remembrance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us hidayah to continue with his remembrance and dhikr, inshaAllah. So Shaykh Ibn Arabi rahimahullah, he was born in Spain, which was known at that time Andalus. And of course for Muslims, especially the youth who don't know, Islam ruled Spain for about 800 years. Now, it was during this time he was born, and again his full name is Abu Abdullah Muhammad bin Ali bin Muhammad Ibn Arabi al-Hatimi al-Ta'i rahimahullah. Not to be confused with the other famous Ibn Arabi known as Qadi Abu Bakr Ibn al-Arabi, who passed away about 20 years before the birth of Shaykh Ibn al-Arabi. And Shaykh Ibn al-Arabi rahimahullah, his father was an Arab, and he came from the Ta'i tribe. And his mother had links and origin to the Berber families of North America. So we can already see that he's already been born into a family that's already rich in Arab and African culture as well. So the culmination of these two things, right, which is also very important when we analyze his life going forward. Now, a little bit about Spain, not too much, but a little bit. or known as Andalusia at the time. When we look at the demographics, especially from historiography, and we analyze the situation, it really was an amazing time to have been a Muslim. Why? Because we look at where Islam started from its spread on the eastern side of the world. And then subhanAllah, by the beauty and wonder of the Sahaba Ikram as well, and their contribution to the deen spread all the way west, and now it's located in Spain, in Andalus. So we find this amalgamation between Islam of the East, now also having to deal with the new generations of Islam in the West. And we do know that this is still a problem in today's time. When families move from an orthodox Islamic environment and then migrate to immigrate to other lands, other countries, where we say life is very fast, and these type of things is always a difficulty. This is something that the Muslim world has been going through for centuries. Now, Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi in Spain at the time, Spain was known as the ornament of the world, because we had on one side the Muslims coming from the east, then we had Muslims now being born in the west, but also an existing people from the west who are trying to come to terms with Islamic rule over their country. So we had Christian living in Spain. Then, by no surprise, wherever, and this is something you can make a note of, mental note, wherever the Islamic Khilafah developed, you will always find the Jews found a home under the rule of Islam and Muslims. Why? Because everywhere that was ruled by Christianity and the world of Christendom, they were oppressed. Why? Because we know the Christians, they blamed the Jews for the persecution and, according to them, the crucifixion of Jesus. So this enmity that they held for a long period of time, it continued. But it was the world of Islam and it was Muslims that came together and said, look, we do not hold this enmity, as long as you remain, don't cause any trouble. So the Jews always followed the Muslims. So we have Christians, we have Jews, we have Muslims from the east, we have Muslims now in the west, all together. So it was known as the ornament of the world. Because if you consider what an ornament is, it's generally something that's very beautiful to look at, but also very delicate. So when the children come to the house, we tell them, hey, don't go near my cupboard, huh? Expensive ornaments are there. So this was the kind of situation, very, very beautiful, but delicate at the same time. So it was at this time when Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi rahimahullah was a young man, where he met the famous scholar who, for some reason, is more famous with non-Muslims than he is amongst us, known as Ibn Rushd. And if you don't know about Ibn Rushd, you can go and do your homework, but basically anyone who studies in the medical field, they'll know who he was and his contribution to the world of medicine that we have today as well, and also philosophy and so forth. So Ibn al-Rushd met Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi when he was a young boy. And it is believed that his father, Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi's father, took him there, and after a short period of time, Shaykh Muhyiddin, after engaging in conversation with Ibn Rushd, came to the conclusion that there's a need of understanding a formal approach to Islamic knowledge as well as a philosophical approach as a young boy. And then he took on this idea of delving very deep into thought. And, we can call it philosophy to a certain degree, but according to the Islamic context. And this sparked a revolution within him of trying to amalgamate both the Islamic text as well as the understanding of it with deep reflection and contemplation, of course, as the Quran commands us to do. Now, when he was about 36 years old, I think this was when he was around 599 AH after the Hijrah, this is where the turning point in the life of Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi takes place, rahimahullah. He sees a vision. Now, we don't have time. Remember, we here to study a little bit about the book, to take lessons home. This is just an introduction. He sees a vision, and there's disputes of the scholars regarding what was actually seen by him. But this vision set him on a journey that continued until the day he died. That when he sees this vision, he left Spain At 36, he went to Tunis, and at Tunis is where he sees this vision. So he's been a person now up to the age of 36 that had no zest and zeal for travel. He makes his first journey to Tunis, and here something happens. He sees either by dream, either by deep muraqabah, and he feels that his Rabb is telling him something, and he's trying to understand and then take what he's understanding to the people. And then it sets off these journeys that takes him all over the world. According to some, he returned for a short period of time to Seville in Spain, or some others live other places as well. And once he left again, he never returned home. And this journey of his continued from country to country to country, and wherever he went, there was positive change. By the time he left, institutions were established. By the time he left, madaris were established, masajid were established. Even when he spent short periods of time, like in our day and age, we can't really appreciate, because we travel a couple 100 kilometers, we don't even need to stop anymore at your ultra cities and your BPs and all this. We don't need to anymore. Why? We're traveling comfortably. But in those days when they stopped for long periods of time, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, get supplies, sort out their horses, their camels, get whatever they needed. And in that period, wherever he went, he left leaders. And this is again something very important to Shaykh Ibn Arabi. Then, when this vision that he sees, that he's trying himself to understand and make others understand, around 1204, about 602 Hijri, he meets Shaykh Majduddin Ishaq bin Yusuf. And where does he meet him? Again, for our youth and those who are listening at home and watching as well, for the fans of the Islamic television series known as Ertugrul, they will be familiar with this, that he meets Shaykh Majduddin at the Seljuk court. And in the Seljuk court, they engage in a conversation, and some traditions say that both of them, becoming so engrossed with each other's company, decide to travel together wherever they're going now. So now, imagine all those years ago, you're traveling in such difficulty, you come across someone, you like their company so much, wherever you're supposed to go, however month's journey and travel it is, you say, it's okay, I'll come with you. Subhanallah. So this kind of shows the type of personality that Shaykh Ibn Arabi rahimahullah had. He oozed this type of love, a magnetic force, if you want to call it, that people were just drawn to him. So it's mentioned, some say they went their separate ways, but some say they traveled, they went to Madinatul Munawwara, and then they went to Baghdad. And the biographers mention that it was in Baghdad that Shaykh Ibn Arabi rahimahullah got the opportunity to sit with some of the murideen of Shaykh Sayyidina Abdul Qadir al-Jilani rahimahullah. And so he also took faiz from them, and they as well took from him as well whatever information that was passed. Now, from here, it is mentioned either before he went to Baghdad or after. Remember, the history is a bit blurred because the information about him started to come to light after people understood who he was and they had to connect the dots. It's mentioned that he spent about 3 years. When he went to Makkatul Mukarramah, he decided that he's going to stay there. Now, how nice if we could have visas like that now, just go there and stay, huh? Right. So he goes there and he spends about 3 years. And in these 3 years, he begins to pen his thoughts, whatever feelings he's having, emotions about the state of the ummah. And when he pens all these thoughts together, he begins writing books, but in no specific theme. And after these 3 years, many books come out, but we'll come back to that at a later stage. Now, another very important point. When Shaykh Ibn Arabi rahimahullah has this vision and sets him on this journey from place to place and country to country, many people don't know that another famous family also decided at that time to also immigrate. Now, Shaykh Muhyiddin is coming from the west, heading east. And another family is coming from Khurasan in the east, and they are heading west. And when we look at these two families, they both spent some time in Turkey today, as we call it, in Konya. And that family was the family of Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, rahimahullah. Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, rahimahullah's father was a contemporary, if you want to call it, of Shaykh Ibn Arabi, and Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, rahimahullah, was quite little at the time. There is no established, well-documented meeting between the two. It is mentioned that they may have spent some time in the same era in Konya, but at one stage in the life of Shaykh Ibn Arabi, when he was in Damascus, and Maulana Rumi was a young man, and he went to study. So it is mentioned in passing, so it's still not recognized as a meeting, that Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi sees this young man, Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, in front of his father. So his father is walking, and behind him is Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi. And he makes a statement. And he says, "Praise be to Allah, for I see an ocean traveling behind a lake." And it was only later understood that he was speaking about the father of Maulana Rumi being a learned man, so a type of a lake of knowledge. But in relation to Maulana Jalaluddin, who was an ocean of knowledge at a later time. So from here as well, people understood the vision of Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, rahimahullah, and how he was able to, just by seeing this little man, understand and evaluate what he will bring to Islam at a certain point. So, quite amazingly, at that same juncture, we have the Abbasids, we have the Ayyubids to a certain degree, we have the Seljuk Empire, we have the Mongolians, who literally were not following any rule. They were type of people that were very barbaric in the way they attacked, and they didn't care about taking prisoners and so forth. And on the other hand, there were also the Byzantine Empire and the Romans. And then inside of that was the Templars, who even the Romans and the Byzantines didn't really support. And conflict was created by certain secretive movements started by the Templars to ensure that the Muslims are always at loggerheads, always fighting, hoping to incite civil war. In today's time, we still see this modus operandi, in which people who are out of the fold of Islam are trying to create problem between the Muslim countries, whether it's for the economy, whether it's for oil, whatever the case may be. This is something that they've learnt over the years under the maxim of divide and conquer, and unfortunately it's found a solid home within the heart of Islam. And as a result, there is this ongoing issue that continues. So when the third empire, the Seljuk Empire at that time, was established, and it was called the Beylik Empire. So for those of you who understand the concept of Bey, then you'll understand the concept of the Beylik Empire. And it was here that the third son of Ertugrul, known as Uthman, yes, I heard someone say he was a youngster, mashallah, good, Uthman Bey, now he is being made to be the leader of this Ottoman rule. Now how amazingly, at the time that he is flourishing, you have the teachings on one side of Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi on spiritual reality, and on the other side, you have the intellectual genius of Maulana al-Rumi. So the scholars believe one of the reasons why the Ottoman Empire initially, when it started with such sincerity and ikhlas, was because of the guidance of these two, but particularly the efforts of Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, rahimahullah. Now, people have asked me this time and time again when they are engaged in this Islamic television series, that what is the link between Shaykh Muhyiddin and the Ottoman Empire? Is it true? Did they meet? What? So scholars will always dispute history. But we do know that there has been a link that was identified much later from one of the works of Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi rahimahullah. He wrote something called Ash-Shajara al-Nu'maniyya fi ad-Dawlat al-Uthmaniyya. Now, you must understand that when he wrote this, the young Uthman Bey was not a leader. So no one ever thought it was about the rule of this Uthman. The idea was maybe he was talking about Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu and so forth before. But as as time went on, people began to see that many of the things he had discussed there kind of corroborated with the unfolding of the historical process to what was occurring in the leadership and role of the Ottoman leader Uthman at the time. So what happened is, when the second Ottoman ruler at the time, later on, in the second era, known as Sultan Salim, when he took over, and there was these expeditions into Egypt and Damascus and so forth, and when he reached Syria, then again, it's very long, we haven't even started with our dars yet. This is just intro and muqaddam. So it is mentioned that when he went to Damascus, he had some dreams, he had some visions in which someone was guiding him and telling him where to go and look for certain things. He was smelling the fragrance of certain things and he was drawn to it. There were certain lights. And as he went closer and closer unraveling this mystery, he began to dig at a certain point and he uncovered the tomb of Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi in Damascus. It was at this point that people went back now to Ash-Shajara al-Nu'maniyya fi Dawlat al-Uthmaniyya, and they realized that Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi may have left a secret to this discovery. He said that when the scene enters the sheen, then will be discovered the tomb of Muhyiddin. So the scene being Sultan Salim and the sheen being Ash-Sham for Syria. So when Sultan Salim, the scene, entered the sheen, meaning Ash-Sham, then what was discovered? The tomb of Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi. Now he wrote this when he was alive. So this is all part, and remember, for us, we don't need to explain how. We already know the ayat of Quran. We already understand. Jusaf is here. He gave hundreds of lectures in this masjid about the awliya and the power of awliya and so forth. Right. Later on, to show you the influence between this Ottoman rule and Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, in 1730, in the Christian era as we call it, there was a battle and kind of war that took place between the Ottomans and we can call it Iran today, but that time Khorasan, right, is the better word, but Khorasan also is very broad. So there was a little bit of a battle, and when they agreed a peace treaty, the people of Khorasan sent their delegation and they came to the Ottoman rulers. And they gave 3 reasons why they would prefer peace and why they prefer the Ottoman people over their own in this matter in relation to the decision. And this is again where the link between Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi and the Ottomans was also established in this particular document as well. They said that you, the Ottoman people, are better because the Prophet ﷺ foretold the conquest of Constantinople in hadith about you. So this was their viewpoint. He said, number 2, that Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, and they called him Lisan al-Haqiqa, the tongue of truth. So Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi foretold your rule in Shajara al-Nu'maniyya, therefore you all are better. And number 3, you all have acquired all of this territory not because of any worldly gain, but because of holy war to establish the kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. And so on these bases, we acknowledge your superiority and we therefore sign a peace treaty. Now Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi rahimahullah, he is believed to have passed away on the 22nd of Rabi' al-Thani, but again, historically we always have differences of opinion. Around 638 Hijri, which will give us 1240 in the Christian era. And he is believed to have been about 75 years at the time, and he had passed away in Damascus. His tomb is currently there. Those who have gone to Sham, I'm sure they've made some type of journey to go and visit the place. Now, as far as his legacy is concerned, he was known as Muhyiddin. At the beginning of the dars, we gave you his name, but that wasn't his name, that was his title. Muhyiddin, because he revived the deen of Islam wherever he went. So this was a very, very important title. The other one being Shaykhul Akbar. Now, Shaykhul Akbar In today's time, every corner there's one Shaykhul Akbar too. We're not talking about in comparison to today. We're talking about in those days. Shaykhul Akbar was because of his mastery and command in the subject of exegesis of the Quran, in commentating and annotating on hadith, in Islamic theology, in matters of jurisprudence, in matters of judging in fiqh. He was really a master. And of course, going from country to country to country, meeting some great shuyukh as well. In fact, his own sheikh at the time in Morocco, in Fez, was a Moroccan scholar and muhaddith from the Tamim tribe. And he took a lot of Fez from him as well. So, in today's time, this is a very important point. I have found that majority of the 21st century philosophers, they are obsessed with the works of Shaykh Ibn Arabi, and guess what? Most of them are not Muslim. Majority of the works of Shaykh Ibn Arabi that has been taken to the next level is by non-Muslim philosophers. And in every generation after he passed away, people compared him to the greatest minds. So when people would say, this is one of the greatest minds of our times, they would say, this is the other Ibn al-Arabi. And if you look as an example, there's an ayah in the Quran that seemingly has nothing to do with Barzakh and the Akhirah, where Allah Azza wa Jalla speaks about the coming together of the two oceans. And He says, بَيْنَهُمَا بَرْزَخٌ لَا يَبْغِيَانِ, which we call an invisible kind of wall that separates the ocean. He took this ayah about بَرْزَخٌ لَا يَبْغِيَانِ and applied the Islamic understanding and philosophical thought on this matter, and then applied it to Aristotle's viewpoints on philosophy, and solved problems that even Aristotle couldn't solve. And it is for this that many scholars up to now say that if you want to take any of the works of Ibn al-Arabi and bring it onto the level of the giants of philosophy of the Western world, you can just only find it from his view of that one word of the Quran, Barzakh, in which he explained the idea of definites and indefinites in ideology and thinking. And it's really amazing. Also, as far as legacy is concerned, up to today in China, there are madaris and institutes. One in particular called the Han Kitab, which took on the legacy of Shaykh Ibn Arabi, and there was a famous thinker of his time called Confucius. Many of you might be aware, might not know, we don't have time to get into it, where Shaykh Ibn Arabi took his thoughts and showed how, where there were flaws in it, and where the Islamic principles could be brought in, and he defeated his arguments, and that books were now taught in China. And this continued for many years. I think the last symposium about this was done in 2008, where it was brought forth. People didn't even know about it. Now, the implications from his work, very important. In today's time, there's a group of scholars. They are philosophers, professors of the highest level, and majority of them are not Muslim. They've created something, and from 1983, which is the year I was born, they started publishing journals in volumes, in translations of the works of Shaykh Ibn Arabi. From 1983, still carrying on. Last year in 2018, they are now on their 64th volume. Every year they have a symposium where scholars from universities come together only to try and understand and discuss the works of Shaykh Ibn Arabi. The famous university known as Stanford. If you go online, there's a Stanford page of philosophy dedicated only to the work of Shaykh Ibn Arabi. What does this tell us? That unfortunately, with all of the effort that they took, the Islamic world didn't really take from it. The non-Muslim world are taking these ideas and moving forward. let's very quickly, we won't do too much today because of this introduction. We'll just start a little bit and then inshallah in the other Sundays we'll continue. Now, the book itself, we're calling it a book. In his time it was probably a few pages that he wrote, right? And it's known as in English, if we translate it, as the Book of Quintessence, concerning what is indispensable for the spiritual seeker. And he used the word murid, but that time the word murid was used different to today. It didn't mean that you had to have a sheikh to be murid. A murid was a person who was trying to bring some spiritual balance in his life. So people used to come to him and ask him for advice. So he thought that he'd pen a few of his advices and he'll put this together so when people want to know in coming generations, they have an idea. So our study of this book, because in the end, what is quintessence? Quintessence is basically something that is a perfect embodiment of something. This is how he understood the word adab. Adab, he understood it to be the perfect embodiment of the human persona and character. And so now, the perfect embodiment of what is required for Muslims as a spiritual guide, he left some advice for us. And the other dynamic of this is because there are those who have tried to vilify him. But you'll see only from this book and only from his advice that each and everything that he has left can be sourced from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, I'm just going to read to you something that he outlines at the beginning of the book. Obviously, we're doing the in translation. Now you must know, now this is now his words, right? Obviously, we're doing it in English. That if a human being renounces their own personal aim and he takes a loathing to his nafs and instead prefers over his nafs his Rabb as his teacher, then the real, meaning al-haq, will give the human being a divine hidayah and guidance in exchange for what the nafs has to offer. He then says, when we accomplish this, then we will walk in garments of light. And what is this light? This is very important. Because people today who want to follow the spiritual path, they forget it. Shaykh Ibn Arabi says, and that this garment of light is the Sharia of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thus the human being receives from their Lord that which contains their happiness, and some people see this divine guidance in the form of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you can see at the onset, he is telling us that if we want to be successful as Muslims in the world, give up listening to what your nafs says first and listen to the ultimate teacher, which is Allah. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say on the matter, and what does your nafs say, and then make a choice. Don't take it the other way. Don't take what the nafs says first and then put in the second Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his law and commands. Now, as an outline for some of the lessons that we can take, and maybe I'll appreciate, inshallah, if the next week's lesson, maybe come take some notes down, right? Why? Because these are important things. The whole idea of study is to try to make notes for yourself. The outlines and things that we will probably take forth from this, first and foremostly, the importance of Tawheed and the majesty of Allah. This is a primary thing that Shaykh Ibn Arabi concerned himself with. The messengers, companions, the people of faith, silence, and the focus of dhikr. In today's time, these are important pointers. He speaks about the right friends and companions on a spiritual path, choosing the right people. He speaks about as-sidq in the right way, being sincere in what you do, how to earn halal rizq the right way, eating little, filling our days up with prayer, sleeping and dressing, all these things by the grace of Allah, but do according to your need and what is needed. These are very important things. We will also be learning advice about Quran, staying conscious, tahara, having the right attitude toward your spiritual opponents. This is very important. Today's time, you have an opponent anything, you want to fold your sleeves up. Huh? But what is the correct way in dealing with the matter? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who wasn't his opponent in Mecca? But look at the end of it. Who wasn't his friend at the end? So it's all set in the way the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ unfolded as well. So there's about 20 or so underlying lessons that we'll take. Now let's start very quickly. Remember we said we're just going to do about 45 minutes or so, inshallah. Shaykh Ibn Arabi, he commences the text as all of the scholars did by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, in the name of God, the most compassionate and merciful. And again, the importance is anything good that we do, we should always remember to start with Bismillah and the hamd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The scholars have gone into the idea of this ba in the Bismillah. What is it for? And they've given various reasons. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has so many names, but we always say Bismillah. You know, when you're a doctor and you're about to give the injection, the doctor doesn't say Bismi Shafi, he'll still say Bismillah. But Shafi would be the correct word. Whenever we do anything, there's a name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we still say Bismillah. Because Bismillah encompasses, the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encompasses all of His divine attributes. So when we say Bismillah, we don't even know which attribute of Allah we want. But Allah knows. Now sometimes you say Ash-Shafi, but you need something else. So when you say Bismillah, there's this combination of linking the barakah of the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us that added whenever we start anything good. So we must get into this habit, inshaAllah. Then he says, O seeker, in this case, like how each and every one of you have come in seeking of knowledge. O seeker, about the quintessence, meaning that perfection that we require as a seeker, what we need to do. He says, I have answered to my ability in these pages. And his important point. And Allah is one. It is Allah who brings fulfillment. And there is no Rabb but He. Meaning what? Whatever I write here, you don't have to tell me this is so good I did. This is who? It's from the grace of Allah. So there's humility as well. Then he says, and this is our first point of study, and with this inshallah we'll conclude. He says, No, O seeker, may God bring you and us to the fulfillment of freely obeying Him and cause us to know what pleases Him. Now this is important, right? As Muslims we tend to overlook these points, but there's not too much to delve into them. He then thanks Allah Azza wa Jal, and then he says, it is incumbent upon you, O seeker, incumbent. It's not an option. If you're a Muslim, if you are searching for truth, it is incumbent upon you to realize, firstly, Allah's Tawheed, oneness of Allah, and then His transcendence and His majesty. I think we'll only do one point. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Tawheed. In all of His works, you will find this link of Him linking the subject of Tawheed. Tawheed seems to be something that we kind of believe, oh yeah, I read Kalima, Tawheed is there. But Tawheed is not just saying La ilaha illallah. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has actually commanded every person, every Muslim to know about Tawheed. He said, فَعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ illallah. He said, know that there is none worthy of worship but Allah. He didn't say, قُلْ La ilaha illallah. He didn't say, Muslims, go tell the whole world La ilaha illallah. If someone asks you, what is La ilaha illallah? You first need to know it. So, La ilaha illallah is Tawheed. So Allah Azza wa Jalla said, فَعْلَمْ, meaning a Muslim must understand what is Tawheed. And unfortunately, we don't know much about Tawheed. We have an idea, it's oneness. Okay, oneness how? How do we explain it? If someone believes in a Trinitarian concept of three gods, and he says, what's the difference between Trinitarian? Because we believe in three but are also one. You also believe in one. What's the difference? So we need to be able to understand. Now the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, famous hadith in Muslim, ما من مولود يولد إلا على الفطرة, that everyone who is born on a natural disposition. This natural disposition is what? That there is none worthy of worship besides one God. This question was asked in Alam al-Arwah. Allah Azza wa Jal gathered the souls of every one of us here, everyone who was created, everyone who will be created. Allah Azza wa Jal asked, Alastu bi Rabbikum? Am I not your Rabb? And guess what? The whole world who will be created said, Bala. Yes, of course. You are. But then why are people there today who don't believe? The Prophet ﷺ said, everyone is born on fitrah, but then it depends how they are brought up, what they are taught, and that they go away. Now, what's amazing is this natural disposition that we are born in. You know what I find in the 21st century with all of the atheists out there today? And I say this, many of my students from my courses are here. We don't have child atheists in the world. You ever saw a child atheist? What is the natural disposition of a child? He believes in the unseen. You tell a child there's a tooth fairy, he'll say, what time is coming? You tell a child there's a Santa Claus, they believe in it. You tell a child anything, because a child, his mind has not been corrupted with the academia of today. It's open to the natural disposition of understanding this. And again, look at a child's mind. When children sit in conversation, they only want to develop the understanding of something, of one. I want you to think about what I'm saying. Two friends are sitting, they'll say, hey, what's your favorite color? What are you implying? That of all the colors in the world, you need to have one. They say, Abba, what's your favorite car? Who's your best friend? You got 20 friends. You want to know who's the best one? And we as well do this. What's your favorite food? What's your favorite this? We always, why? Human nature is always developing towards that one thing. But little do we realize that our thought processes are magnetizing us to the understanding of the one and only. That it is so many other things in the world, you always want the one thing. Why is it when the one who created you, you want to find others besides him? This is the very point that we are taught by the hadith that we are born upon this particular fitrah. Now, in relation to the subject of Tawheed, the Prophet ﷺ has given us numerous insights onto understanding it, onto studying it, and so forth. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but what we will say is that we've just reached point 1, and we still have to finish it. Can I finish it, or you want to go? You can't say go now, someone's going to tell you something later, huh? Okay, mashallah, see, I put you in a trap. Right, bismillah. So, Shaykh Ibn Arabi on the same point of Tawheed, which is point number 1 of advice. He says, as for realizing the Tawheed of Allah, and this is now, he brings the rational thought. And we today, living in a time of rational and the rational faculty, where atheism, Darwinism, evolutionism, and every other ism and schism out there is telling you, use this and you'll come to the conclusion that there's no God. Ibn Arabi is saying that when you arrive realizing at the subject of Tawheed, you will understand his unity and ask yourself that if there was a second God, it would be impossible for any other action to occur from those two gods because of the differences in their will. Because of the differences in their will, both of them in actual determination cannot exist. Now, I'll explain you this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in my new book, in refuting some heinous allegations made against Rasulullah ﷺ, we're bringing in the idea of the Quranic philosophy of Tawheed and why it's illogical to worship more than one God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains this to us in the Quran, Surah 21 verse 22. لو كان فيهما آلهة إلا الله لفسدتا. Allah Azza wa Jal is asking us to reflect on nature, and He says, if there were more than one God, there would be chaos in the world. Why? What's the date today? I don't know. What's the English date is fine. I know you're worried about moon sighting. English date is fine. What's it? Of May. Now this one you'll know. What time is Maghrib? Ramadan time you'll know. What time is Maghrib? 15. Right. Next year, inshallah, if we are alive in good health, 12th of May, what time will the sun set? Same time. What time was sunrise today? Okay, I won't ask you that one. Huh? But what time next year the sun will rise? Same time. Why? Because everything is under the command of one Rabb. If there were two Rabbs, one will say, next year let the sun set later, man. Next year let the sun rise later. And then when two gods go at loggerheads, what's going to happen? Chaos in the world. Forget going far into cosmology. When two superpowers meet on earth, what destruction happens? Imagine if two gods met. What will happen to the world? But the world is continuing in its existence. And Ibn Arabi rahimahullah is telling us, you don't need to go too far to come to this realization. Look at the uniformity in nature and you will see that there's only one. Now, I've mentioned this in my book, The History and Compilation of the Quran in 2014. In Surah Yasin, I think it's verse 46 if I'm not mistaken, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala discusses the cosmos and He says, He speaks about the sun, وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا. He speaks about the moon, He speaks about the day, He speaks about the night, and He says, كُلٌّ فِي فَلَكِ يَسْبَحُونَ. All are in orbit, moving together in a motion. Now, this here as well is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us that if you focus on the cosmos, you will come to the reality that if everything on this magnanimous scale is occurring in one flow, there can't be more than one God. And for those of you very quickly, the word kullun fi falak in its own is the Arabic linguistic depiction of what is the rotation of the planetary systems. When we look today at the solar system and the way everything moves, and now if you go home and you open the ayah kullun fi falak, the first letter is kaf, the second letter is lam, the third letter is fa, the next letter is ya, and then we have fa, lam and kaf again. If you read it forward and you read it backward, it's kullun fi falak. And what is an orbit? An orbit is the same thing. In order for scientists to understand whether something is moving in orbit or is falling in space, they have to see whether the procedure when reversed is moving exactly the way it moved forward. So even when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about the planetary orbits in motion, He said it with the words that even describe it in an image that we will be able to draw. That this is how the cosmos works. Now, very quickly in concluding this particular aspect of the Tawheed, the Quranic logic which now Shaykh Ibn Arabi brings, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking us between Tawheed and polytheism, is about if there were more than one God. Now, I would tell you, and I said this at Jummah as well, and I've been saying this for months, sit with your families, it's Ramadan, we all want to finish reading the Quran, we all want to see how much of sawab we can bank, but also try to understand it. It's still early days, set a date with your family, tell them next week certain time, I want you all to take a couple hours and study Surah Ikhlas. And then at supper, after we make iftar, we're going to sit and see what we all discussed. What did you find out about Surah Ikhlas? What do you know? And you see what your one child brings and the other child brings and your spouse brings, your family brings. You have a family discussion about the kalam of Allah. Because Surah Ikhlas is the true manifestation of understanding what is Tawheed. Really. But we haven't understood it. So it starts off by saying, Qul Allahu Ahad. Allah is one, but not in the numerical value. Imam Abu Hanifa explains that La min tariq al-adad. We don't say Allah is one in a number, but walakin min tariq la ilaha illahu. But we look at it from the point of one in worship. We never look at it as numbers. Why? If we say Allah was one in a number form, like the number one, then a wise elect will come and say, well, the number one you can add to it and make number two. You can deduct from it and take it to zero and go into integers. So is God what? One or zero or two? Huh? So Imam Hanifa says, no, we don't look at it that point. We look at it on the factor that one in worship, not on a numerical sense. Now, on the subject of why there can be no more than one God, it's very philosophical, a lot of things. Inshallah, I think what we'll do, we'll end there today. And we'll continue from next week, from the go, inshallah, on the subject of Tawheed and all the other pointers of note that Shaykh Ibn Arabi has left as a means of guidance for us today. And alhamdulillah, we're still learning. But the idea is for us to attend these dars programs, and the aim and objective should be that by the time I leave knowing more. But knowing is not enough. It's knowing and implementation. You know, people ask, why was the Quran revealed in Arabic? Quickly, anyone? Well, you excluded, huh? Quickly. What is the Arabic word for knowledge? Ilm. And what is the Arabic word for action? Amal. But both have the same three letters. Ilm, Ain, Lam, Mim. Amal, Ain, Mim, Lam. In the world of education today, they teach you knowledge. When you study knowledge, there's two things: theory and practical. According to the Arabic language, according to the Quran, the ilm that we receive is the theory. The amal is implementing that theory into practicality. So every time we study, that should be the objective. How do we take the ilm and transform it into amal? That's one of the objectives of study in the Islamic world, according to Quran and Sunnah. Nonetheless, if anything good has been achieved, the praise belongs to Allah, the fault belongs to me. Astaghfirullah Rabbi min kulli dhanbi wa atubu ilayh. We ask Allah to make the dua quickly. Bismillah. Al-Fatiha. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد وأصحابه وبارك وسلم صلاة وسلاما عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. اللهم ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم احفظنا من كل بلاء الدنيا وعذاب القبر وعذاب الآخرة. اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك. اللهم افتح لنا بالخير واختم لنا بالخير واجعل عواقب أمورنا بالخير. بيدك الخير إنك على كل شيء قدير. يا رب بالمصطفى بلغ مقاصدنا واغفر لنا ما مضى يا واسع الكرم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من عذاب القبر ونعوذ بك من عذاب جهنم ونعوذ بك من فتنة المحيا والممات ونعوذ بك من فتنة المسيح الدجال. والله تبارك وتعالى معظما لحبيبه إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وأصحابه وبارك وسلم بقول سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين بحق